Welcome back, friends. Today we are making some bread. All right, to get started, let's get this yeast blooming. What we're gonna do is gonna add 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast. Then we're gonna add 2 cups of warm water to it. 1, 2. Okay, so while this yeast kind of wakes up, we can go ahead and get all of our flour and stuff ready. And so this recipe, why I love it is that it makes a lot of bread. So I normally do 1 loaf bread and then also 1 baguette from it. So it takes 5 cups of flour. I normally like to weigh out my flour in a lot of cases, but this is just something that I make all the time and I don't really care too much about it. Close enough is close enough in my opinion for this one. 3, 5, perfect. Next we're gonna add a tablespoon of sugar. And then lastly, about 3/4 of a tablespoon of salt. And you can totally make this by hand, but I like to use a stand mixer because I make it all the time and I have a stand mixer. So I'm gonna get that over here and then we'll get assembling. Still waiting on the yeast, but I like to mix all the sugar and salt in with the flour, so I just let it rip. So we're gonna give the yeast a couple more minutes and then we'll put it in. So I know this yeast is ready, pretty close to being ready, so I'm just gonna go ahead and add this in. I'm just gonna turn it on low until everything is incorporated and then we'll knock the speed up a little bit to finish the kneading process. Sometimes the 2 cups of water is not quite enough to get it where I like it, so I'll add a tablespoon at a time just until it all comes together. You can tell it's coming together now. So all the flour has been incorporated, so we're gonna turn it up and knead this until it's smooth, and that takes about 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes, and so what I like to do is take it out, throw it on my bench, and then really try to develop it into a ball. So we got a nice ball. I'm gonna put about a tablespoon of olive oil down here in the bottom. And then just cover it, just cover it in the oil so that it doesn't develop a skin. And then put a towel on the top of it, and then I'm gonna put it over here and it's gonna go for its first proof for anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half, just depending on what your ambient temperature and humidity in your room is. All right, so I'm back. It's been just about an hour. So I'm gonna turn this dough out, and it's more than doubled in size, out onto my bench. Just kind of push them down. I'm just gonna take just a super cheap bench scraper. You can use a knife, and I normally make my loaf a little bit bigger, think about 60% of the actual mass of dough. You know, I don't weigh anything out here. A lot of people will shape this into like a proper loaf, but I'm just gonna roll it out, tucking the ends in until I get something that looks decent. That's good for me. So I'm gonna take my loaf pan, I've kind of already pre-oiled it and everything, and then just transfer this into there. Looks all nice. And I'm just gonna do the same thing for what's going to be my baguette, but it's going to be just a little bit bigger. I'm now gonna tuck the ends in, get the pretty side up, and then transfer this to my sheet pan, which I have a piece of parchment paper on. I'm gonna take my original towel and then just cover these up and let these sit like this for another hour to an hour and a half until they kind of get springy. Halfway through this, I'm gonna set the oven to 400 degrees to let it preheat enough and kind of get to an ambient temperature that's reasonable, and then we'll bake them. See you then. All right, well, this has been proofing its second round, a little over 2 hours, so they look good. Really happy with how they turned out. So now we're gonna take a knife and score the top of it. Scoring the top of it just tells the bread where it can like puff up. Because if you didn't do it, it would just explode and you would have cracks and stuff wherever. So You can be as creative with these, or, you know, it's really up to you. I'm going to do a W in this one because that's just what type of person I am. And there's a bunch of different type of washes that you can do with this. You can do a water, an egg, or milk. I'm going to do an egg wash because it makes a really shiny outside. This is just one egg and a little bit of water mixed together, and so nothing big. I'm just going to take a little brush and hit the outside of it with it. I can almost guarantee the baguette's going to turn out nicer than the loaf this time. Okay, this all looks good. I want the whole thing to be shiny, right? So I'm going to put these in the preheating oven. It's at 400 degrees for about 25 to 35 minutes. The loaf normally takes a little bit longer than the baguette does. So the alarm just went off, and let's see how they look. I think they may both be done. Let's pull them out. When we pull them out of the oven, we're just going to put them on the stove and let them sit there for about 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, these have been sitting here for about 5 minutes, and so I generally just move them to a cutting board and then let them sit there to fully cool. So, got these on a cutting board, and we're just going to let these sit here and cool for at least an hour. It's really important not to cut this while this is hot. You're going to let all of the moisture out of it, and you're going to have a really dry, stale bread from the start. So, be patient. It's well worth the wait. So, everything's cooled. It's been an hour, so let's break it open and see what she looks like. A beautiful little crumb. The smell is just amazing. So the only thing left to do is cut us a slice and put a little butter on it. Still warm. Super soft, super pillowy, better than anything that you're going to get at a grocery store. So let's get to the next one and see how that turns out. Okay, so this no knead, I'm actually going to measure out. We need about 1 pound of flour, which is about 3 cups if you don't have a scale. Okay, next we're going to go in with 2 tablespoons of salt. This particular recipe doesn't generally call for sugar, but I like to add a little bit. I like a little bit of sweetness to my bread. So we're going to go in with 1 teaspoon. Then we're going to go in with about 3/4 of a teaspoon of yeast. And we can get this off the scale. I'm just going to mix all these dry ingredients together. Make sure they're well incorporated. And then once they're incorporated, I'm going to go in with about a 1.5 cups of warm water. And we're just going to mix this until it turns into a shaggy dough. Essentially, we're just looking to get all of the water incorporated into the flour the best that we can. Okay, let go. So now we're just going to cover this up. And one of the only downsides to some of these no knead breads is that it takes a long time for its first proof. This one's probably going to go anywhere between 4 and 8 hours. You're really just looking for it to double in size and then also to start looking like a dough. So, well, it's the next day and I completely lied. I did not put enough sugar and yeast in this for this to be a single day. It really, I actually picked the wrong recipe, but to make this a lot faster, you can add more sugar and you can add honey. And I would probably go up to a teaspoon of yeast, and it would be a lot better. But to get started and finish this bread, we need to form it into a bowl. Today I'm going to be using a proofing basket. I've had it for a long time, but I've never used it, so it may turn out horribly. But let's do it. So just so I don't forget to, I am going to go ahead and flour my bowl. And this just keeps the dough from sticking to your bowl. I'm going to lightly flour my bench. I'm going to use my bench scraper to turn this out onto the to my surface. You can see all the beautiful gluten that is formed. I'm gonna hit the top just a little bit with some flour. Now we're just gonna form this into a ball. And use my bench scraper to help me. There we go. I'm going to cover and we're going to let this sit for an additional 2 hours. In this proof, it should also double in size. In about an hour, I'm going to start the oven up, have my Dutch oven in there so it can preheat, and then we'll have some delicious bread. So our lovely little dough has been proofing for about 2 hours now, and so the next step is we're going to turn this out onto this piece of parchment paper, do some decorating, and then we'll get it in the oven. Let's see if I can do this carefully. Cool. I'm going to make 2 slits along the sides. And then this little bread basket came with some nice, cool little stencils. So I'm going to decorate with these, I think. We got stars. Could be better. And then kind of this little sun looking stencil. Okay, we'll see how that turns out. So now I'm going to pull out this Dutch oven, get the bread in there, and then get baking. So the bread's going to be in the oven for about 30 minutes, and then we'll pull the lid off and let it go for another 10 minutes or so to let some color develop on the crust. And unlike before, when we take it out of the oven, I immediately move it over here to the cutting board to let it cool down. Cast iron is so hot that it would continue to cook it, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful loaf. One of the better looking ones that I've made in a long time. Now, like before, we're gonna let this sit and cool almost completely, at least an hour, and then we'll try a little bit of it. Really can't wait to see what the crumb looks like in it, so see you back in an hour. This beautiful piece of bread has got done cooling and can't wait to get in it. Let's see what she's like. Not bad. Smells great. You can definitely tell that it has some of the sour fermented flavor to it. Now let's get a little slice. One day I'll learn how to cut bread. And let's get a little butter. Wow. So this bread has way more flavor than the other one does, and it's just because it, sat around for 12, 18 hours. Definitely worth it. I would suggest making this, making the dough before you go to bed, and then just leave it in the refrigerator, and then you can have nice bread in the morning. We've got a little Ada dog underneath us. If you've never made bread before, this is a great way to start off. It's a super simple bread to make. You can make the other one as well. It's a great bread that can last you all week. Either way, have fun with it. Enjoy making bread as much as I do. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Beautiful bread.
Cool.